he's kind of almost like the Randall Flag of the James
Yes.
Ellroy corpus.
Hmm.
He's the Man in Black. I mean, he's just a terrible, terrible person. And he kind of is there to just agitate and take advantage of people, and he's very self-centered and just will destroy anybody who gets in his way. And
Like unequivocally, like he has no compunction about just flattening anyone who stands in his way. And like what's interesting about him is that his only moral center is his own personal, like, do you think he has no moral center except for his own like personal advancement, or does he do it because he just genuinely enjoys like playing chess with people's lives?
I don't know, because I mean, I thought his relationship with Hideo was interesting. I mean, Hideo is also, I mean, this the same way that Kay kind of is kind of batted back and forth by all these like Elroy men. Hideo kind of goes back and forth between being uh, kind of subservient to Whiskey Bill, and then at one point in the middle of the book, he kind of defies Whiskey Bill's wishes, and
Because
then he
Whiskey
ends up,
Bill was drunk and doing like pulling some
What? When?
shenanigans. Right? Whiskey Bill was
yeah,
drunk.
not an ironic nickname.
Yes, no.
Yeah, because Whiskey Bill told him to basically just start beating up people that he had problems with, and Hideo was like, "You're out of your mind. I'm not going to do that." And
It was
so, but
Ace
then at that
Quan,
point,
wasn't it? Wasn't it Ace Quan that
yeah,
he
yeah,
told
it
to
was Ace
hit?
Quan,
Yeah.
which is interesting because I found it really fascinating, the whole the racial dynamic of Japanese and Chinese people
Mm-hmm.
really not liking each other, but but the thing about Hideo is that he goes from Whiskey Bill to just becoming kind of pals with Dudley, or becoming kind of a protege of Dudley. Dudley
Mm-hmm.
winks at him a lot, and Hideo kind of, it makes him blush. Because and I mean, I don't, which, but to me it was interesting that like Dudley likes him a lot. Like, I mean, I kind of did get warm fuzzies every time Dudley
Yeah.
called him Bright Penny. I was like, oh,
It's
Dudley is charming as fuck. I'm not gonna lie to
yeah.
you. He's really
Yeah.
horrible, but I mean, he's like Al Swearingen in Deadwood. I mean, I think he's really charming. I would
But
like
at
to hang out with that guy.
but at the same time, I cringed because you never know what his motives are. Like he genuinely
Yeah,
seemed to like Hideo, but if Hideo if Hideo needed to be dispatched in any way possible, I don't think Dudley Smith would have had any sort of like reserve. Like
no,
he would have
he
just
random
stumped him.
yeah, he randomly kills the Japanese guy because after like post coitus, while he and
Hmm.
Betty Davis are
You know.
smoking the literal cigarette, um, she says like, kill a Japanese man for me. Of course, she uses a slur, and so he just leaves the house and goes and just finds a random Japanese guy making a phone call in a phone booth because they didn't have cell phones in World War II, and just shoots the guy dead.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. It's interesting, but Betty Davis ends up, when she finds out about that, she's horrified and is like, "You took me seriously? I can't believe that." And then and he's sad because, which I thought that was interesting, that James Ellroy has never shown Dudley have kind of a moment of weakness,
Hmm.
and the way he showed that was by having him getting his heart broken by Betty Davis as the
Yeah.
book progresses. Like, he ends up becoming kind of a social liability and like making annoying phone calls and showing up at her house unannounced. I mean, you're like, just stop doing it. It's like
Turning
the
into a
scene,
lapdog.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's like the scene in Swingers where Jon Favreau won't stop calling the answering machine.
Hmm.
You're just like, God, I've never seen Dudley be like this before. It was kind of hard to watch.
It's it's a really interesting weakness, and it becomes his obsession, which I love. Like the way that he became obsessed with the phrase "you've inconvenienced me." Like that's such a
Yeah,
dismissive term,
yeah,
especially for how he felt about her. For her to say "you've inconvenienced me" is like that is kind of some mind fuckery. So for that to be the way to describe what happened between them, for her to say "you've inconvenienced me," that is an infuriating thing to say. So I can sympathize with that, but at the same time, it just also goes to show like how like big and great Dudley Smith's ego was at this time, that he thought he could get away with sending flowers to a married woman to her home address.
yeah.
He's a
That
really
is,
interesting character. I mean, all things told, I think Dudley Smith and Whiskey Bill Parker are my two favorite characters from the novel. Like they represent like the
oh,
same side of the coin, but like
yeah.
just
The,
different versions of the same head. I don't know.
I want to.
Mhm.
I mean, the 20 pages that Ward Little was in were
Hmm. Right.
I'll go. We don't have to talk about Ward Little is a character from American Tabloid and is my favorite character that Ellroy has ever made. He's like the one Ellroy
Who is
character
he
that I
again?
would.
I think I'm forgetting.
He's the guy who. He's the one. He's the guy who. He's an FBI agent who.
Is he buying up property?
No, he's not. He's the guy who basically ends up babysitting Hideo's mother. Because Hideo's
right.
the when the interment's happening, Hideo is the one Japanese man on the LAPD payroll. He's like a crime scene investigator. He's like a CSI basically, and so Ward is babysitting Hideo's mother, Mariko, and they end up basically just getting drunk and having fun together. It's almost like he's basically hanging out with like a Japanese Lucille Bluth, basically is how I imagined it.
Right.
And every time they check in with him, they're playing loud music and like getting drunk together out on the balcony, just watching all this crazy shit happening. Like watching, half tracks and tanks driving down the street.
They're kind of like the Greek chorus of this novel, where it's just like they're just kind of like outside of it. Yeah.
But yeah, Ward is basically like the one Ellroy character that I would ever describe as sweet. So every time they showed him in the book, I just kind of got warm fuzzies because I really like him. But yeah, as far as characters that really matter in the book, Dudley and Whiskey Bill are both fascinating.
Yeah, and really, really great characters. And like
both Catholic too, strangely enough.
Do I?
They're both Catholic, so there's all this like weird
Catholic guilt.
Yeah, they're both dealing. Well, I mean, it's funny because like Whiskey Bill is like racked by Catholic guilt. It seems like, which is why he's hitting the bottle so much. But then Dudley Smith kind of uses Catholicism in order to just like figure. I mean, he'll think of like he thinks there's like a greater good to what he's doing, basically, so that like absolves him of everything. So it's interesting to see like two different extremes of what people can do with that like kind of Catholic worldview, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, well, Dudley Smith is. It's almost like John Stuart Mill and Kant. Like Kant, because
I was just about to say that's
this is all you, Tyler.
like John, I mean, like you say, Dudley Smith thinks that there's a greater good for what he's doing. Like he's always thinking about like how will it affect the most amount of people, or how it will affect him, but also will get the most things done. Like he's sort of like the backroom politician who will make sure that the law gets passed, even if it means like fucking over some people.
He's like Frank Underwood, basically. Yeah.
Whereas Whiskey Bill Parker is more short-sighted in that to him the act is the thing that matters. Like he does not plan in a like grander scheme. He thinks about individual acts and how they will sort of become bigger events and like sort of like snowball into something else, which they don't because he's not thinking long term the way that Dudley Smith is, which is why he ultimately kind of loses.
Yeah, which is weird too, though, because Whiskey Bill, he's like very weirdly prescient about world events. So I thought that was very strange how he was so bad at planning in the course of the novel. Like, I mean, his whole thing of manipulating Kay, who he's pretty much basically in love with.
Oh, absolutely in love with, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not. You kind of wonder if that whole Kay plot really matters at all, or if it was just his excuse to drop in on her at all hours of the night. You know,
it seems like it. Like it seems like that was all there. Like it was just him toying with the idea of all of this like lurid underground sexual like weirdness.
Yeah, but I thought can't remember where I was going with that.
Well, I almost feel like we need to do a second episode of this just to talk about more of the book, because I mean we've been talking for 75 minutes about it.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like, I mean, I have to go, but I feel like we could do another whole episode, like sit down and talk for another hour about this book.
Yeah, we could. I mean, we could just talk about. I mean, can you talk for like 10 more minutes and we can just kind of wrap it up? And
sure, Tommy, can you stay for 10 more minutes, or do you need to head out, bud?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Oh, you're good.
So,
I'm good.
I just popped a Benny,
I'm just gonna. So, go ahead, Josiah. Like, what's something you feel like we need to totally hit before?
I guess just the end, like where everything kind of comes in the end. So, they end up the crime of the family that gets seppuku'd. They end up pinning that on like a nightmarishly evil Japanese man they refer to as the werewolf all the time because he's got crazy hair.
But he's also hilarious, which is weird.
Yeah, he calls his penis the beast and like speaks in a different voice when he thinks his penis is talking instead of him. It's very strange.
Also,
but,
Tommy, you listened to the book as well as I did, and the voice that is used for the Wolf Man is so hilarious.
Yeah.
Especially at the point I was listening to this book, I was listening to it at 1.5. So him speaking in these like really fast clipped sentences that sort of stop like really abruptly. It was hilarious that someone who is this depraved would be this hilarious. Like, it was
He's
so
already
weird.
doing a voice for that guy who's
I know.
got a peculiar way of speaking, and then that guy's doing a voice.
I know. It's
that's pretty. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. So so they pin it on the Wolfman.
Yeah, they pin it on the Wolfman, and then
who seems okay with the whole thing. Like, he's just like, just send me back to jail. I don't care.
Yeah, he's kind of because he just wants to go back to jail, and I guess he just likes people thinking he's a freak. So people end up getting like pictures taken with people come in and pay money to get a picture taken in front of his jail cell and stuff. It's crazy. I mean, and a lot of Ellroy's stuff is he's just really interested in kind of like the theater surrounding big crimes. I mean, so that's like, the Black Dahlia is a key example of that. But it ultimately it comes down to the person who actually did do it. I think it was that Jim Two Gun Davis, who was a kind of a rival he's a former police chief, I think, whereas Whiskey Bill is going to become police chief in real life after the events of the book.
Two Gun Davis isn't he the police chief at this time? And it's sort of like
I think maybe he is. He's either the current police chief or the former police chief, but he's shown as the guy that committed this heinous murder because he's part of this weird land grab kind of conspiracy. And I really wonder if any of that man's family has read this book. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, I really wonder if his great grandchildren are like, I kind of take issue with that.
Yeah. But he also had a very conspicuous like, you caught me, here's my whole villain plan.
Yeah, like he monologues like, you can't. Oh, you can turn me in, but like there's like several pages like, you could turn me in, but here's how it's going to turn back around on you. Yeah,
it's basically like Ozymandias and Watchmen. They can't really pin it on him. And
almost exactly like that.
Yeah, but he's like, I'm gonna die next year anyway. I got the cancer or something like that. Or I've got the cirrhosis.
Yeah, I've got the consumption or something.
Yeah, he's got something, but because
who confronts him? Is it Whiskey Bill who confronts him, or is it Dudley's? Yeah,
Whiskey Bill does, because ultimately, and I thought this was a little bit, as far as James Ellroy is a master craftsman, but there was this one plot thing where there were phone calls made to a payphone from the house of the Watanabe family that was murdered, and the whole time that they're like, well, we're going to find out who made those calls. We're going to find out who made those calls, but Ma Bell is backlogged because of the war.
Right.
And they keep saying it. They're like, God damn it! As soon as those calls come in, we're going to find out. And then wouldn't you know, when the calls finally do come in, that wraps it up, and they find out who the guy. Which I thought that was a little bit
convenient.
Yeah, it's a little bit convenient.
Like, I mean, why did we go through all this?
Yeah, I was like, why didn't we just like chill out and wait for the calls to,
Because look, I heard a lot of racist shit in the comments.
Yeah,
I had to endure a lot of racism.
But ultimately, we can end it with talking about what Kay did, because I really liked that a lot. After she had gotten in a fight with the butch lesbian Dot Rothstein in jail, and then Kay like shivs the shit out of her. It's one of the most like brutal fight scenes I've ever read in a book before. What happens after that? What's the end? The Dudley Kay thing that I'm talking about.
Well, she dresses like a Chinese man, like a Chinese man who's part of
like a Tong.
Oh yeah, like a
Chinese gangster.
Yeah, like a Chinese gangster in order to murder Dudley Smith, and then manages to slip away, which was awesome. It's a very visual like filmic.
Dudley's in an opium den.
Yeah, he goes to get high.
And then, she sneaks in because she wants to do that to get revenge for the Japanese man who was killed in the phone booth. And so she stabs him a lot of times, and then it disappears into the night. And that's my problem with being a sequel, was that that Dudley Smith isn't going to die. He shows up in, I think, The Big Nowhere is the first book he's in. And so when I actually saw James Ellroy...
That's the General You.
Yeah. When I saw James Ellroy in person for the reading, I asked him, my one question that, of course, I like kind of stammered through was, I said, I mean, were you bothered? You like to kill characters in the middle of books. Kind of, I mean, his death rate of point of view characters is probably higher than George R. R. Martin's.
Right.
And I said, were you bothered that this was a prequel and you couldn't? And his answer, he said, well, there's already plenty of death in this book. And so I was like, okay. And then he kind of went on to tell me that he used that as a chance he realized I didn't have a good follow-up question, so he explained something about what rank Dudley Smith actually was supposed to be. But
right.
At any rate,
quick questions, quick side question.
Yeah, go for it.
What a baller move would it have been if, like, towards the end he really does just straight up like kill characters that are still alive in later books?
That would be pretty amazing. He just doesn't even he's
like fuck my fiction. Who cares?
Who even cares?
Well, I would say that, like, even though it is disappointing that we know he lives, it is still an amazing moment when he awakens. Like, all of that was so well written. Like, it was almost worth it to know we know he survives. Tommy didn't really, because he didn't know, but we do. But it was still such a great, like, rising from the dead moment that he has. That was so also great.
The fact that, like, Dudley Smith has been destroyed by two women over the course of that book, like, one, has emotionally destroyed him, or socially, like, right. Betty Davis is, kind of destroyed him, like, socially. She's kind of cast him out. And then Kay, like, knifed him near to death.
Physically. So, one is emotional castration, one is almost physical castration.
Literal, yeah. And so I loved, as much as, like, the Whiskey Bill and Kay, I mean, I didn't really buy, I know that Kay is going to go on and do other stuff in the Black Dahlia and end up with other people. She'll actually, kind of get to know Bucky finally in that book. But I like the ending of this book a lot. Yeah. I mean, I reread the last couple of sentences over and over where it just says Whiskey Bill just kind of goes to her house and just, like, watches her sleep. Like, I know that's, creepy? I know that's creepy, but I just liked it so much that it ended on this, like, very weirdly, like, sweet moment. Yeah, he says, a breeze stirred the fire and lit her hair red. He smelled the prairie. That's not a euphemism. They both came from Oklahoma. He thinks that they share, like, kind of that prairie background. So he smelled the prairie. He touched her face and said, Catherine, love. And then that's the end of the book. I really like that.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm a sap.
I'm really liking the Bone Clocks, so I can't say that this is my favorite book I've read this year, but so far it is my favorite book I've read this year. So I'm, like, halfway through the Bone Clocks, but I really loved Perfidia. Tommy, what's your final take on the book?
I liked it, and I'm going to be hitting you guys up for what's the next Ellroy book a callow noob like myself should go to.
American Tabloid.
Really?
I think so.
No hesitation.
Yeah, I think that book's so good. Yeah, I think I've
never read that either.
You've probably had enough LA for a while too. That one goes all over the place. It's just, I mean, it's him, like, just kind of exploring America in the 60s. It's awesome. Really good. Also, cool, Ward Little.
I liked it a lot. Yeah, it's my favorite book this year so far. So Bone Clocks is clocking in there too.
Well, what? It's boning in there.
Hey, okay. shearing its way past.
No.
So we'll do this again next month.
Awesome.
So for Tommy and Josiah, I'm Tyler, and this has been the Principled Uncertainty Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Okay, and that's it. That'll do it. So that was a long one, guys.
Yeah,
I think you have to. Yeah, you can't be talking